interest in the project if you reduce the number of cells. Right now you have 7. So we need to get the eyes on this project by 3 companies, say 2 in Baltimore, 1 in Ohio, that are willing to assist in manufacturing, and then they send their installation crews and perform the work, and then they go back to their respective states. If you're going to reduce the project from 7 to, say, 3, it's going to be even that much more difficult to get the eyes on this project and get those companies interested, because they're, as they say, they're supplying these to the entire country. We need to make sure we can get eyes on this project for Cheshire. It's become such an issue that recently I've had to combine municipalities to get the interest from the contractors. I had to combine the towns of Berlin and the town of Orange because they had limited numbers of cells in their towns that they needed to get renovated. To put eyes on the project, we had the 2 towns merge their projects so we could get better interest and better pricing. So with our experience, I think we know these companies that we want to get interested in this. We can make them aware of the project. We can make them aware that it's out to bid. We can get them interested. But there has to be a project here that they want to come and participate in. I think 7 cells is a project that they will participate in. But I can't guarantee these pricing, the bids, when they come in. We are trying to estimate, based on our experience, what the pricing is and what the pricing's to be anticipated. But that does not come with a guarantee because of this really specialized construction project. So those are some things I just wanted to give you up to date, what you're really dealing with in the construction side. This is not a project that general contractors that are local will take on without the support of those 3 other companies. They don't have the resources, and they don't have the ability to go out and get these jail cell fronts fabricated locally. There's no one in the state that will be performing that work for them. So it's really trying to get these contractors who have done this in the past to get reinterested in this project when it goes out to bid, to get them onto your bid list, and then make sure that they're giving you a competitive number. So there's a lot of things with this project that are very unique to make this project successful. We also have to, and I think you were passed out plans. To meet accreditation standards, we have to provide 3 separate containment areas with sight and sound separation to also aid in your accreditation. 3 areas of sight and sound separation is for male detainees, female detainees, and then a 3rd separation, sight and sound separated, for any juvenile that may be under the care of the police department. So if you're looking at the plan, you have cells 1 through 4, which gives you 1 area of containment. Cells 6 and 7 gives you a secondary area of containment. And then cell 5 is a 3rd area of containment. Any cell renovations that are being performed throughout the state needs to now provide a handicapped accessible detention cell. So we make that cell 5 the isolated containment area of 1, so that could be utilized for if it was needed for male or female or youth. Then you switch over the other occupancies in the other containment areas. So they have the flexibility now for those 3 containment areas. Reducing the numbers, you see how that would reduce your containment areas that we're still trying to maintain 3. The cells 1 through 4, actually in the back area, you have 8 cells in that location. We're reducing it to 4 and then turning the remaining area into storage. So that actually is helping in reducing costs, because we don't have 4 more detention cells that we needed to renovate. We're going to be removing 4 cells in that back area. Other costs that are involved with this is the booking areas that you see on the plan that says book 129 and book 130. Right now, booking is performed within a 1 area of containment within a wire mesh enclosure. Wire mesh has its own liability, but the fact that have to put multiple people into one booking area is also a liability we're going to eliminate by providing an isolated sight and sound separated booking area. So they can now bring in two prisoners at a time, sight and sound separated, and they no longer have the ability to have interaction within one wire mesh cage. We have the secure corridor 142 is being established with temporary evidence storage lockers. And this now allows circulation through from the Sally Port into the building without having to enter the prisoner processing area. That circulation path right now goes from Sally Port into prisoner processing and then from prisoner processing into the corridor. That is a path which may involve officers going back and forth from the Sally Port to the building, and now they can make that passage with a firearm on their body without needing to then go into prisoner processing. So it's another liability which is addressed in this renovation. So we've dealt with a lot of issues, and I think we've come up with a plan which is efficient, it's functional, it's safe, and it really addresses the liabilities that are over there currently. I mean, the building, when it was renovated to current standards. But at today's day and age, those are not current standards that you should be having within your facility. These standards that we're bringing it up to now meet the accreditation bill, meet accreditation standards, and also reduces your liabilities for suicides and even, not just the detainees, but for officer safety also in the booking process. So that's my quick summary of the project.
Can you talk a little bit more about the three separate areas that have to be, why is it three areas?
You need sight and sound separation between occupants. You can't have
But why is it three?
Females would be one containment area if you had a female prisoner in your possession. Male would be the second. And then if you were to need to process a juvenile, that has to be the third containment area. You need to provide sight and sound separation between those three occupants.
But is that stated anywhere? Is that the standard, a statute, a whatever, that there needs to be three?
State statute.
It is?
Yes.
Can you get me that or send that to the council?
Sure. Question. Currently, there's no ability to have, if you have a male, a female, and a juvenile all being detained simultaneously, you have no way currently of separating those three?
There's only two secure areas right now.
So the answer would be no. There's only two containment areas currently. When it was renovated for male and female. It was not anticipating the juvenile.
There's no way to make that happen without construction?
No.
So if you had, under the current configuration, with 5, 6, and 7, I assume 5 is isolated and 6 and 7 are together. So that would be for 2 males, 2 females, 2 juveniles, and then you could utilize 5 either for a disabled person or somebody that's not of the same gender as 6 and 7.
That gives you the two containment areas, sight and sound separated, yes. You're back to 2 containment areas if you're using 6 and 7 as one containment area, because 6 and 7 don't have sight and sound separation from each other.
Right.
So 6 and 7 is one containment area. 5 is your second containment area. The current facility only now provides 2 containment areas. We're trying to bring it into the standards to provide the third.
top page there is the current configuration.
Right,
So there's the 3 cells together, that if you've ever been on a tour in there, that's designated as the female cells. And then there's the back area with the 8 cells, so that's only 2. So the proposal is to, again, to upgrade that, take out one of the 3 cells that are in a row now, make the larger cell that's ADA compliant. So you could, that is, as you can see from all the doors and everything, that can be made sight and sound secure from 6 and 7.
right.
And then, again, give you the back 4 there as your third area.
And Chief, please correct me if I misspeak here, but when we discussed this the other night, I thought I heard you say that it is a rare occasion where we have 3 detainees at the same time.
Yes.
If we did have 3 detainees at the same time, one was a male, one was a female, one was a juvenile, could we request mutual aid for one of those individuals?
We would have to, yeah.
We would under the current configuration.
Current configuration, yes.
So, and we could do the same thing if we just kept 5, 6, and 7 and utilized 1, 2, 3, 4 in the mechanical in the hallway for some other purpose. And again, subject to checking the state statute that says, I just, in a town, in Cheshire's 30,000 people, but in a location of 15,000 individuals, it's got to be very tough for them to have 3 separate sight and sound secured detention areas.
Well, in the renovations that we're doing statewide, we are providing the 3 separate containment areas for those purposes. I mean, relying on your neighboring towns is the option that they have currently. And if you're only providing 2 containment areas, it's going to have to be the situation that you have going forward. So we're trying to eliminate that, because if ever you're using an adjacent agency to take care of your detention needs, it doesn't mean they take care of the care and supervision of those detainees. Town of Cheshire has to do that wherever they're taken to. So the town of Cheshire is still responsible for that. It takes officers out of town. You have to feed, you have to supervise, you have to then be there for that detainee in the neighboring town, wherever that is. So it does take manpower, it does take labor to provide that task, and it does take people then out of town to perform that.
Zallard? Oh, and then we'll come down the other side.
So it's my understanding that cell 5 in the proposed drawing is the ADA compliant cell, is that correct?
That is correct.
So if we were to find a way to eliminate cell 5 and somehow combine it and only have 2 holding cells, then we would need to make sure that either holding cell 6, 7 or holding cell 1 through 4 would also be ADA compliant. Is that correct?
Yes, in a renovation, we have to make one of them handicapped accessible, yes.
I'm assuming per state statute as well?
That is correct.
Okay, just wanted clarity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't recall ever being in a jail cell, so I don't claim to be an expert on this, and I hope to never have to be one. But I do have a real issue in spending taxpayers' dollars to overbuild, because it's the only way we can get builders to look at our project. And I believe it is overkill if we have a majority of only, or the most we might have is 3 people to have 7 cells. we have the luxury, I guess, or the privilege, or whatever, to have a prison in this town. And perhaps there's a way that we can, if we ever get to the point where we need have more than we can handle. And I don't know, Chief, if you've ever had to use the prison to put a detainee in there, but I just really feel, the amount of money that we have to spend just to get a contract on this is just not fair to our taxpayers. And I feel that we need to really look into other options here. And I know you said sight and sound, and I don't know how sight and sound and everything else is, but I mean, is it putting the blocks between the cells and right up to the ceiling and around there? I mean, could you do 3 where you just basically have a shade come down when there's a female walking through and then put it up when she's already in her cell? I'm not really sure. As I said, I'm not an expert on this, you are, but I just feel that using taxpayers' dollars to build 7 cells just because, that's the only way we can get a contractor to look at this project is difficult for me to really, support, so.
Agree to some extent here, but I understand we also are dealing with state statute. And so if you could just speak a little more to what Berlin and Orange did. I don't know if there are other communities locally that we could work with. How did that work?
I think it happened by circumstance, really, when the municipalities reach out to our firm to get assistance in cell renovations. It just so happened that Berlin and Orange called at a similar time to our office. And talking with Berlin just had 2 cells that they wanted to renovate. They had a male and a female detention cell that they needed to get up to current standards. In my conversations with Berlin, I told them the difficulties that they're going to have just trying to renovate 2 cells. But I did say to Berlin, I just received a call from Orange, and they want to do a similar project for their cells. So the town managers discussed then a joint project, which they got approval through the councils for a bid waiver. And they hired one construction manager to manage the projects for both towns, and one construction manager organized both projects. So they needed a bid waiver through the council, and both municipalities agreed in concept, and it was performed for each town, keeping the financing separated, so each town had their own invoicing. So it successfully worked for both of these communities to achieve what their goal was, to improve their detention cells. And I wasn't trying to state that we're overbuilding. I think we've gone from 11 cells to 7 cells. I just wanted to make you aware of the realities of what you're facing. We could be reducing numbers, and we could be increasing costs. We're really at a point where the contractors are going to dictate the pricing, and whatever project you put out on the street, that's the project that we're going to have to get contractors interested in. So however you want to go about the project, we're still going to have to get the interest, and they'll ultimately determine what the market value of this project is. And that's just the reality that I just wanted to bring to your attention.
If I could just add one more, and in adding the prisoner processing cell and the booking stations, that is making this project bigger anyway as well?
That is correct.
Excuse me for a start, but when we first looked at the project as a subcommittee in the Public Building Commission, we had a look at that part of it too. We were told to go in there and just do the cells. And the original project was, in my eyes, we're going to change the cell fronts on 8 cells and walk away. But you don't just do that. The cells have to be fully renovated. You have to change the seats. I mean, the benches, the whole bit, they have to be proofed out for suicide. You got your toilet facilities, your your cameras, everything has got to be brought up to date. It is not there now. So in looking at that, we, as the subcommittee, and we said, okay, we went to the chief and we went to the police department. What can we do? We don't need all these cells in our eyes, too. We said the same thing. So we had a meeting about the number of cells that, what we could live with and what we couldn't. And correct me if I'm wrong, Chief, but I think we came up with these numbers was that was at some points we could hit that number. We also are sharing our facility with other towns, Wallingford and Southington, if I remember so far. And they could have 5 people come over here. And we have to be available for both towns as well as what we'd be able to use their facility as well if we have an overrun. So, I mean, I think it was a lot of planning involved in that, in the number of discussions, but I think we really came down with a number that really worked. And reducing 2 more cells out of the facility, will that make a change in price? I don't know. From what we're hearing from Brian is that it's possible that it might increase the price because it got smaller. So, less interest. So.
So, I'm not an architect. Forgive me if this is a dumb question. It's my understanding that part of the expense is the fact that each individual cell is essentially an enclosed area, and therefore there was a need to provide ventilation. There were, like, the guts of the room needed to be installed. Is that correct?
Sounds like you're an architect.
Nah. But, okay, so this is my thinking. It seems to me, Donna, I tend to agree with you, if we on average have about 3 people that we're holding at a time, on average, and if we had more, we would call for mutual aid. But if we, on average, have about 3 people, 7 does seem to be still excessive. I understand the need to have 3 separate holding areas. I understand the need that one of them needs to be ADA compliant. What I'm wondering is, you currently have your plan, cells 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way in the corner there, and I'm wondering if there would be a cost savings if you took the office that is behind cell number 5, and you can have shared, I don't know what they're called, the guts, that would be the HVAC, the, air supply or whatever. So if that office can be converted into 2 cells, you would then have 3 separate holding cells that could potentially share the mechanics that are needed for each holding cell. Is that a possibility, and would that save money? And potentially have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cells, which is not as excessive as 7.
You're correct, there's a lot of infrastructure
Yeah.
that goes along with these cells and cell installations. The building code classifies this area of your building in institutional occupancy. For an institutional occupancy, the main concern of the fire marshal and the building official is self-preservation. So getting people out, people that are incapable of self-preservation are now being contained in your building. So if there is an emergency, they're not able to get out without assistance. So it's an institutional occupancy. There are certain requirements now that we need to put into these facilities for smoke evacuation and smoke separation. That's part of your plan. And the way the building is constructed currently, the location of your existing cells is much easier. It's contained in that institutional area. It has separation from the rest of the building. It does aid in smoke separation. We have to have smoke evacuation. So each of your containment areas, we have to provide separate smoke evacuation systems. Negative air pressure, positive air pressure. Your current cell designs right now are open fronts. We're calling them open because they're just bars and the air flows through the front of the cells. The new designs, we call them closed fronts. They no longer have the ability for air to transfer through the cell fronts. This is for a number of reasons. This is for officer wellness, so they're not breathing air that may be contaminated within the cell, tuberculosis or other disease or things that are within the cell. We have to make sure the air transfers are appropriate. But with now a closed front system, we have to provide individual supply and return air within those contained cells, which is what you were alluding to. So we have to be concerned about how air is introduced, how air is exhausted,
Right.
transfer of air, officer wellness, as far as smoke evacuation. So all of these things, and Steve brought up surveillance and audio. We have to provide cell surveillance, two-way audio, panic buttons. So all of those systems have to be put into place for each cell. In the area of cell 1 through 4, you already have the plumbing in that area for the cells 1 through 4. You already have the containment for smoke evacuation, you don't have that at the area of the office. Reducing the number of cells from 1 through 4 to just providing 1 and 2 would mean those areas of cell 3 and 4 would no longer be in use and would not be utilized for detention anymore. So you can reduce numbers just by reducing the number of cells that we renovate. If you want to reduce 1 through 4 to just 1 and 2, we would just have 3 and 4 be areas of storage. Or I think there's infrastructure already there with plumbing. The toilet facilities are already plumbed. There's fire suppression that's in that area. We just thought, if you're doing 5 cells, why don't you take the infrastructure that you have and go to and keep the 7 cells? So we think that's a cost-effective approach in what we're doing through cells 1 through 7. But if you want to reduce the numbers, then you would reduce the 4 cells to another number, whatever you feel appropriate.
Mr.
Can I make a point of just clarification?
Yes.
We don't average 3 prisoners. The most that I've ever, that anybody ever remembers having in the facility at any one time is 3. That would be the maximum
Thank
number
you.
that we've had. So, yeah, I didn't want to misrepresent that we're averaging more than that. I mean, it's almost unusual that we have anybody. But when we have them, they're ours, and we have to make sure that they're cared for appropriately. So,
Thank you for that clarity.
Jim McKenney, Chairman of the Public Building Commission, longtime resident of Cheshire. And with that long time goes a history. History of watching a sewer plant built that was below the water line, a Highland school with a brand-new roof that leaked from the first day, none of which were part of public building. One real problem was the pool. And I want to bring it up because I hope you don't make the same kind of mistake made then. Back then, I was on the Public Building Commission, but not in charge of that project or the chairman. I encouraged them not to put a bubble. I worked at a pool all through college, Kennedy High School, Waterbury, sliding doors that went up. People walked out in the summer, utilized the pool, rest of the winter, swim teams. The comment was the town will never approve a $3.2 million budget. It's got to be 2.9. With that 2.9, we cut back to get a bubble. That bubble cost us probably 10 times more to do that final roof than we would have done it correctly at the time. I don't have a vested interest in what you do with the project, but they're not trying to. A very specific type of contractor is not overcharging you if that's what they charge everybody else, and there are so few people that can do that kind of work. And I think you're missing a couple points. They were very diplomatic in explaining the safety of the officers not getting feces thrown on them, and other things of that nature, or prisoners hanging themselves in their cells, and the liability that this town would face. So I just urge you to have faith in the process, and that no one is trying to take advantage of the town or the taxpayers. Because I'm a taxpayer, just like everybody else in this room, and everybody on the Public Building Commission.
So,
Thank you for that moment.
no, thank you, I appreciate it. No, I think, and you've heard it from both sides, you know, Mr. Walsh as well as some of my colleagues to my left as well. I think, Mr. McKinney, we're just looking at saying the most we've ever seen in the history of some people that have been involved in the police force for a very, very long time is 3 maximum. And we're building 7 cells. Each cell, I assume, has a cost to it. Do you have an idea of what these new cells cost? So if we said we just want to buy the parts, forget the installation. I want to have a cell in my basement that's like this. How much would it be?
They started around $75,000.
Okay, so if we say we want 4 instead of 7, we're saving almost $250,000. You know, there's, just to make sure, we're not talking about cutting corners. We're talking about doing these cells and meeting the requirements and doing the changes that will put us in compliance. But I have a real issue with putting together, building 7 cells at the cost when the most we've ever had is 3 incarcerated individuals at one time. 7 to me is overkill, and it's not a smart way to spend taxpayer money. That's where I am. Ms. Kramer?
Just some history questions. Sure. Have we ever needed to ask neighbors for aid?
Not in the 13 years that I've been.
Are there currently any liability claims against your department for any deficiencies to the facility?
No.
Are we in code right now unless we start construction?
You are in compliance with the code when it was last renovated, yes.
Okay, and for the deficiencies that you found during your walkthrough with weapons, and are those some things that can be addressed without construction? Maybe policy, maybe moving physically around where you do the booking. I don't know, I'm just trying to think outside the box. Instead of 7 new cells at a cost to the town that is, it's not, we're not, there's no claims against us for the current cells. There aren't any true code issues where we're in violation of menacing. So I'm
I
just,
think that the municipalities that we've been working with, their requests for cell improvements is not because of current claims against the municipalities. They're being done for potential claims against the municipalities.
sure, which would be the
So-
case for any improvement to any structure.
Right, and I think Cheshire has responded in requests for assistance under the same regard for what you have there is a known deficiency in your cell construction. It's not meeting current standards, and that's why other municipalities are taking the similar action to get them improved because of the liability.
And by standards, you're talking about what's in use in a majority of the state, or are you talking about standards that are written into law, into statute?
What is being done in similar communities?
Similar communities like any communities right now that have done this? That
Any independent police departments in the state of Connecticut.
Okay, thank
Not all
you.
municipalities have independent police departments, but the ones that do are concerned about the conditions that they have for detention.
Thank you.
I just want to respond to Mr. McKenney. I appreciate you coming up here and the time you put into the Public Building Commission, I really do. But, I mean, to bring up the pool and Highland School and everything else when we're talking about this I don't think is really accurate. I think like our chair said, we're not looking to undercut the quality that we're going to have. But to build 7 when the max we ever had was 3, at least in the last 13 years, is going to cost us a lot of money. I would ask the chief, perhaps, since you are the president of the Police Chiefs of Connecticut, I believe, or
Not anymore.
or you were, but you have connections, I assume, that maybe some other towns may be looking to do this as well, and maybe we can see if we can piggyback off any of them, like Ms. Pearson said. I think that might be a way that we can save some money on a project like this, and maybe get the lesser amount of cells in here. So I would like to see if we could do that, and see if there are other towns who have to comply with what the state statutes say. I mean, I'm sure not every town in this state is complying, and I think it's time that, we spend some time trying to find it before when I said, yeah, let's spend a couple $1 million to do this, and, you say that you have to have somebody flushing the toilets every day or every week to pick, will these be self-flushing because you don't have to have somebody coming in? I mean, I would hope so for the amount of money, but, that's a concern, where, things do have to be, if you're not using them, things will go wrong with them too. So, thank you.
First of all, I do want to thank the Building Commission for the effort they put into this, because they were given a directive, and they're following the directive. So I think the tone, to a certain degree, is not fair. And I'm apologizing that you may feel like we're not being fair to you. I agree with everything that everyone says, but they were given a program, and they moved forward. The price came higher, and that's why they're here to explain to us what they're doing. What we need to do is give them clear direction. If we're going to do anything, and if we're going to ask them, or nothing, or if we're going to ask them to do something, what is the program they're going to have to design? Not try and design it for you. I mean, you're an expert. We're not going to try and be your expert. But I do want to thank you for what you've done with limited funds, and I think a very reasonable design effort. You brought a lot of good information to us so that we understand the challenges we're facing, and they reduced the number of cells. I think they were looking at originally just doing the same number of cells for maybe the program wasn't well-defined, but I don't think it's fair for us to imply that they're trying to ask us to do something that's too expensive, or that that's not necessary for the town. I think they're telling us the information we asked them to get us, and for that, I want to thank them, so.
We actually did look at alternates to make this project work. So if we came over budget, we were thinking about how we could do this. Yeah, could we stop and not do 1 through 4, just leave them as is? Yeah, and take it out of the project. There was considerations for all that. Can we cut it down to 1 and 2 and eliminate 3 and 4? Yeah, we can do that as well. We could also bid this project with an alternate. So we could bid the project with the number of cells we have, and we could take an alternate, a deduct alternate, on what we want to try to take out. If you want to take out 2 or 3, we can bid it that way. So there is options here. It's my big thing here, and I have a son that's in the police department, and I hear a lot of what goes on sometimes. He doesn't tell me a lot because it's privacy things, and I think the chief has put the kibosh on what goes out, normal. But a liability of one liability here could pay for this project. The lawsuit of one point. Right now, and I've been involved with cell projects for years with Chikushing's office. We have seen some cells that have just needed renovation, 50 years ago. But these are aged, I think we got 25 years of these cells. I think that's where we are on this project. Yeah, about 25 years, which is a lifetime for a facility of this size. We've learned over the years that you design for, correct me if I'm wrong, 20 years?
Yeah.
We designed for 20 years. We're at 25, so we're looking at that as well. But again, we could bid this in alternates. We can eliminate 2 right now and just take them off the site. We could do 2 more as a deduct alternate. Again, I think, getting the contractor's attention is a big one too. So we have to look at that whole picture.
So let me just clarify, and John, thank you for bringing that up, but if my questions or comments were interpreted as anything different than looking out for the taxpayer, then I apologize. The drawing on page 2, if you could just answer one quick question, and then I promise I won't ask anymore. The back in front of 1, 2, 3, and 4, there is a dark border, black border boxed in with some diagonal lines and smaller boxes. What is that?
Prisoner processing.
Those are lockers for personal items of people who are within the detained cell.
Okay.
So you have to take their personal property and store it while they're within the cell. We also have those similar boxes in the middle of the plan
Yep, I see them.
for 3 more personal property lockers.
They look like gym lockers. It's
Yeah.
Yeah.
basically a lot, there's.
Yeah.
so there's
Metal.
There's 4 there for the 4 cells.
If you took cell number 1 and turned it so the opening was towards the door,
I would like to utilize the existing plumbing. And the existing plumbing.
and you couldn't do that if you turned it? Got it. Okay, nope, that's good. That's a deal breaker right there. But if that was there, you could put a door past, to the left-hand side, past number 1, and still utilize that hallway, the 2, 3, 4 space, and the mechanical space as something else, correct?
Well, the mechanical 116 is your plumbing access to the cell fixtures.
Okay.
So you have to have access to that area to control the water and control anything that's from
Okay,
behind
so
the
that's,
cell.
the mechanical area is off
That-
as well.
that's
Although
a-
you wouldn't need as large a mechanical area if you only did 1 cell in there.
You would still need access behind the cell, and that's what we have behind 6 and 7, and that's the door that we have behind the plumbing fixture in 5. So all of the plumbing has to be accessed from the rear. So we have the ability to maintain those areas for access.
Your flush valves are back there, your
Yeah.
controllers.
But if you cut it off where the number 2 is and just drew a line across that mechanical area towards the top of the page, that's still fair game, and you would still have, through that door, access to the plumbing facilities
For 1 and 2.
that are, or just 1.
Yeah, and I have to look at this not just in 2 dimensions, but in 3 dimensions. This is on an upper floor, so we have to be concerned where that plumbing goes to the lower level.
Right.
How those systems then feed from the upper floor to the lower floor. So we want to try to maintain as much in an existing location as we can, so we're not affecting the lower level, in spaces that are below this. All that plumbing and drainage and mechanicals is in place and existing. We're leaving it there on the lower level. We're only modifying it on the upper floor. So it does make a pretty efficient plan. The only new plumbing that we're introducing here is cell 5, and we have to then go down into the lower level to accommodate that drain and and get cell 5. But 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4 is all existing plumbing.
My last comment is that the 9 members of this council have always said and will always say that public safety is our #1 priority. And along with that, keeping our officers safe is a top priority. Not doing this project, to me, is not an option, but to do it at this scale, I have a difficult time from a taxpayer standpoint. We have to do something. We have to get it so that our officers are safe. I'm not sure the scope of this is where we need to go. And that'll be my last comment.
Hi. Thank you for everyone's comments and questions. Mr. Hume, you mentioned that there were 3 areas or 3 issues of liability. The cells, we've covered the cells pretty well.
Right.
The second was firearms, and the other one was processing or
The booking
the
process.
booking. So you brushed through those other 2 a little bit. Can you just take us back through that and how this new plan is enhancing our kind of protection as far as the liability goes in those 2 areas?
The liability in the booking process, and the chief could probably explain this just as well as I can, but whenever you're bringing people into the facility, you have to be concerned about officer wellness and the wellness of the detainee, whoever you're bringing in. You have to understand this could be the person's worst day in their life, having to go through this process, and they're not always in the state of mind that you want them to be. They're not always cooperative like you might want them to be. They're not always communicable like you might want them to be. So the police officers have all of that stress that's put upon the processing of anybody that's brought into the facility. Right now, if they're faced with bringing in multiples at one time, those multiples are placed into one containment area, which is a wire mesh cage. If the officer then has to then go assist anybody in that cage, then it brings the officer into that cage area in contact with what could be multiple detainees. It's just not a safe condition for the officer to be in. And if you're placing 2 or more detainees within one caged area, there's also a great potential for conflicts between the people that are within that area. We need to find a way to separate that out so they don't have contact. They don't have the ability to communicate, whether verbally or non-verbally, between each other while the police are trying to perform their services of processing. By isolating those detainees in separated masonry booking areas, the officers can then place the detainee into these areas, self-contained. They have a bench, they have a window out to a booking area, they have an area that paper can get passed for signatures. The 2 footprints that you're seeing on the plan, they can do the mugging process while they are still within the booking area, so they don't have to leave the caged area to do a mug shot, which they currently have to do in their current arrangement. So anytime you remove them, excuse me?
129 and 130, those 2 spaces
That
you're
is,
talking about?
that
Okay.
is.
Currently, that footprint is, as Brian described, it's like a 12 by 12 wire mesh holding pen almost.
Right.
Cage. It looks like a cage.
With a single bench in it.
Right, okay.
So if you have to then detain somebody to the bench, an officer has to go into that cage area to do that. With the booking process that we're proposing, they could be placed within the booking room, the door can be closed, they're secured within the room. The officer then has an ability to take handcuffs off the detainee through the doorway. They're still contained within the room, and the majority of the booking process is done now with that person secured, and the officer's no longer concerned about where they are, what they're doing, and how they might be interacting with somebody else also in the booking process. So that's the liability that we're eliminating with those two masonry enclosures. It's a simple fix, and I think it's a great add to the project. The second comment was about firearms. Because of the process of bringing detainees into the area of processing and booking, firearms are not allowed within that area for obvious reasons. We don't want any firearms to be involved in any incident within the facility, or if somebody was to overtake an officer in that area, we don't want them to have the ability to overtake their firearm. So firearms are restricted from the processing area. So in the process of bringing a detainee into the building, they drive into the sally port. Before anybody is allowed out of the vehicle, the officer should be securing their weapon in a locker, and once that firearm is secured, then they can transfer the detainee into the building. If you're looking at the circulation path right now, the sally port is not only used for transferring detainees, it's sometimes used for inclement weather, so patrol can use that for shift change. So the regular course of a business day, when they don't have a detainee, but it's a bad weather day, they'll use that sally port garage for bringing a vehicle in for shift change, and the patrol would switch out and take the vehicle. They now have to get to that sally port through the prisoner processing area, but they can't bring their firearm through there. It really creates a conundrum of how do we get from the building to the sally port if we're not in the process of booking. Having that circulation path then separated off from the prisoner processing area eliminates that conundrum and allows the officer to go from the building to the sally port area if they just want to use it for garage and access for patrol vehicles while carrying their firearms, and the firearms are no longer within the area of prisoner processing. So it's another, you might see as an easy fix. It is an easy fix. It's a great reduction of liability just in that easy fix.
So it's just the addition of that wall, more or less, to create the corridor. That's all you're talking about?
And placing the evidence, temporary evidence storage lockers, the other two boxes with the diagonals through them. If the police officers are bringing in any evidence into the building and they need to contain that evidence for temporary storage, they can place the temporary evidence into those lockers. Temporary evidence could be firearms that they need to contain within temporary evidence lockers. The temporary evidence lockers right now are the boxes that are to the left where it says report, and it's right adjacent to the wire mesh cage that you're processing prisoners in. There could be temporary evidence in those lockers, and that could be firearms. We're eliminating that liability.
Gotcha.
So it's really a twofold firearms answer,
Right.
both for evidence storage and for officer safety.
Okay, thank you.
It seems to me that it's two projects. Like there's this project you're referring to now and the prisoner cell part to it. Is it possible to split these? Would the one contractor that's so difficult to attain, would they be doing the whole project?
They would be doing the whole project. This would be bid to a general contractor, but the cell front contractor would be a subcontractor to a general contractor. So the general contractor has the ability to do all the other work that we just talked about: masonry, doors, hardware, flooring, finishes. General contractor locally can do that work.
So we could do that now and not do just hypothetically, not do the cells and do the processing and all that separately?
Conceivably, yes, but whatever you're doing within that area makes that area off limits to the use of the police department. So we're trying to reduce the downtime, get it all done at one time, because anytime you have contractors in this area, then no prisoners or detainees can be brought to the facility.
So then that leads to the question of how long would this take, and then what would we do in the time that we're under construction?
That is an arrangement that the police department would have to make for neighboring communities to assist.
One last question, I apologize. As far as timing, if we were to go forward, because of this, there's so few contractors, what's your sense of the timing of getting a contract to do the cell portion? How long might that take? Is there a window for that?
This could be up to 10 months, and you look at the scope and you think, why? And it's supply chain. You would get a contractor on board and under contract, but cell fronts take about 6 months to get from when you place an order to delivery. It's about a 6-month lead time. So they will do some work and mobilize only when they know that they have the cell fronts on a schedule for delivery. So it'll be about a 10-month contract for the general contractor. Downtime in the facility would be maybe down to 4 months. But they would have to order material, get material in, and then perform work, because we wouldn't want the police department down for 10 months.
Question, can you, and for anyone who's watching this, can you refresh our recollection, what's the current price tag on the project as proposed? You know, do we have that number?
We had a budget of, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's 1.7, no, 1.975.
Okay. All right. And I guess my other question is, you know, and I think that Councilman Wolf brought up a good question, and that it was important to see, can we do, because obviously the cells are important, but obviously for the police safety and security, this the booking and the wall obviously seem like it'd be its own separate project, but I understand the situation. I guess my other question would be, you know, would it be possible, I guess anything's possible, right, that, you know, we obviously, just practically, we don't need 7, but obviously some of your concerns are, if we're not at a high enough number, maybe we don't even get their eye on this project, so that we don't even get 3 or 4, unless maybe we could do what some of these other towns did, which is try to bid them together or bring other towns in to, you know, to say, okay, you're coming into Connecticut for 7 or 8, but it may be in 3 in this town and 4 in this town. Because I was just, so I have 2 questions. Just if you could go through this, the understanding, the sight and sound issue, and I'm just looking at items at cells 1 through 4.
Yes.
Is there a way, and I know maybe this is, maybe, you know, the issue will be you can't do it because you can't walk prisoners past other prisoners, but my question is, would it be, if you put a wall between 2 and 3, such that, you know, you could have, so that, you know, in theory, there wouldn't be, 3 and 4 would now be potentially out of sight and sound of 1 and 2. Would that be possible? Or is because you might have to walk prisoners past 1 and 2 to get to 3 and 4, that's an issue?
It's not so much walking people by. We would have to put a different type of door, so the door could be totally closed from sight. It's more the sound separation. The way that cells 1 through 4 are constructed right now, they just have steel plate between those cells. Sight and sound is asking for masonry between the separation areas, not just a steel plate. So if you are in cell 2, you would need a masonry wall between 2 and 3.
Okay, so you'd have to further support or solidify and soundproof between 2 and 3 than what's currently there.
That's correct. It's more of a sound issue in the area of 1 through 4. We are also under state statute that we can't reduce the square footage of a cell below 60 square feet. So I have a size limitation to what I can go down to. So adding a masonry wall would be reducing the square footage of those cells to below the state standard statute of 60 square feet. So there is more complications to just add the wall, give me a wall between 2 and 3, and we're good. We have to meet those square footage requirements.
Okay, I'm just
And
curious.
they're built to that minimum standard currently.
Right.
Everybody's building to a minimum standard for a cell. Why make them bigger than you need to? So they are at a minimum standard.
Right, would there be room that to make some of those, maybe 2 and 3, you know, expand it lengthwise to make it larger? I realize I'm just asking questions because obviously it's tough to gauge what size you really have. And when you're looking at these rooms, I'm just trying to figure, could we ultimately confine all of our cells to just 1 through 4? Or maybe have 5 as an alternate cell out here as the handicap cell, and either eliminate 6 or 7, or cut the wall between 1 and 2 and only have 1, 7, 6, and 5.
I support what Steve Durkee mentioned in placing this as alternates. Bid the project, and if you want to take an alternate price on 3 and 4, you'll find out what that price is. You might say, wow, we got a good price, let's do 7. We'd identify the costs of those additional cells. We're doing it in a cost-effective way here because we're utilizing existing plumbing. Changing, moving, I think is going to reduce the numbers and increase the cost, unfortunately. We have to try to utilize existing infrastructure as much as we can to try to get your best price. So we've done that in this plan. Anything can be done to shift and modify and rotate. But in my opinion, you're increasing the cost by reducing your numbers. If you want to just reduce the numbers, we could take a bid alternate on 1 through 4 or 3 and 4, or get the contractor to tell us what that market price would be. Come back, and then you could make a decision based on bid pricing.
One other thing to mention too is that there were some complications even in the prisoner processing area and cells 6 and 7 and 5. There was existing facilities of duck chases for other places. One duck chase actually fed the dispatch area. So there was some talk about they wanted to eliminate that, but we're putting costs back into the project. Now we got to put a rooftop over on the dispatch, cut that ductwork out, and that increased the cost of the project. So kibosh that real fast. Okay, we're not trying to give you any more work than you need or any more expense. So the configuration, some of the configuration there is to keep away from touching anything else that served other areas in the facility. So.
But thank you very much. I know it's a very complicated situation, and I appreciate, the thought, the effort that you've put into, as well as the Public Building Commission. I think you guys have done a great job in what we've asked you to do, and come back. I know we have a focus that we're also concerned about as well, from a cost perspective and other things. But obviously, you're bringing back some really great information for us, and we truly appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, to Mr. Marlone's point, I think we need to give you guys some direction, but I don't think that we're quite there yet, clearly. So I guess we will have to deliberate further on this and then get back to the building committee. But thank you guys again for everything tonight and all your work to this point.
Thank you for hearing us.
I hope it helped you make a decision. Thank you.
Thank you.
What will be the next hour-and-a-half long item, Sean?
We have Dr. Solon and Vin Massiana from Cheshire Public Schools.
I only have 5 minutes of material. I'm not like Neil.
Mm-hmm.
More of my architect.
Yeah, exactly. Where's my suit? Good to see you guys. I know that last hour and a half will come in handy when I write my book on prison design, but someday I'll be on Jeopardy or something in a closed front. What is closed front design? Anyway, last time we got together, we were talking primarily with a focus on year one. There was kind of like an A and B to this. Year one requests, and what could we do to prioritize some of those requests to give a better sense of, you know, where do we have more urgency on a project versus others? Just to frame that again, like, all these projects were things that the Board of Education has been reviewing over the course of many years in most cases. On this sheet with the yellow yellow highlighting on it. When I say we've been reviewing them for many years, the yellows are relatively new. They are new. The other B section of that conversation, if you recall, was what active capital investment projects over $10,000 do we have that maybe could be closed out? And we could reduce that theoretical liability that's out there. And so if you look initially at the copy with the yellow highlighting on it, these are the first year projects that you had asked us to review and try and prioritize. I want to thank Vin and his team for really going through these in great detail to identify, all right, what are the marquee priority items that we would need to retain in year one, because generally speaking on those, they're either of more urgency, like a health and safety matter, or they're things like windows that have been a historical ongoing project that we're just looking to try and complete. In essence, we're just clipping off little bits of at a time every year, and we want to continue that process. And so with these, you know, we can certainly go through them blow by blow if you prefer. It's pretty self-explanatory. In summation of that, we did have an initial total proposal of $5.1 million. The items that we identified as more urgent to leave in year one have been shaved down to $2.7 million. So I think that's probably a decent time to pause, let Vin add anything, and if you guys have any questions, we can go there too.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. Good evening, everyone. The only thing I will add is that we didn't remove anything from the list. We looked at the highest priorities. We're recommending stay in year one, which is the 2.7 million. Items that we rated as medium priority, pushed that to year two, and those total 1.875 million. And then those items that we thought could wait another year, we rated those as low and moved those to year three. So that's $525,000. So that was the request from the council, and that's how we reprioritized. I think we walked through each of these items last time, but certainly we can answer any questions that council members have.
No, I just, I want to thank you for going through this exercise. This is a tremendous help for us, so, and having you be the ones that decide is even more important to us, to make sure that, you know, we're hitting on the things that are top priorities for you, so.
I mean, all kidding aside, it would take us well more than an hour and a half to give you the backstory on every single one of these projects. So we appreciate the opportunity, particularly as, you know, graduation and the school year was culminating last week, to give us that little extra time to get to today to review these projects again with our team and be able to provide you some more thoughtful data on that process. I'm happy to jump into the active capital projects. If you want to go there on the second sheet, we could always come back to the first. This outlines all of the items that had been approved over the course of many years. Some of these go back pretty far, and for various reasons, we've made notes on the right-hand column there, the second to last column as you go over. The first two items, you'll see Highland and Humiston. Those are ADA compliance issues. We haven't necessarily been held to task about Humiston ADA compliance issues. We've made code compliance updates and things over the years, like, fire suppression, things like that. But, at this point, I guess we're a little bit reticent to close that out, because if somebody does come calling on things, then the money is available to, more immediately remedy those things. So we had some reservations about closing those out, but, you can see that the close in bold are things where we've identified that the project in most cases is complete or in a position to be able to be closed and at that point, and I guess recaptured. You'll see under the science lab improvements, it's number 14 on the far left, CHS science lab improvements. I was principal when that $500,000 was allocated more than approximately a decade ago. And frankly, at that time, it wasn't quite enough to update labs and the number of labs we have in a significant way. Today, I imagine it's probably well short of what it would take to do the science labs at CHS. So we left it with the knowledge that, it would probably take an addition to that to make meaningful improvements in the labs there. And I guess putting the ball back in your court to say, is this worth closing out $500,000 to seek $1.5 million, 3 years from now? Is it better off to stay there at 500 and seek $1 million 3 years from now or something like that? And when I say 3 years from now, please, that's hypothetical. There's no plan for that. As you guys had mentioned when we got together last time, that, we really, as a community, it's important to take a look at the next phase to help us in things like this. That conversation was had with the Board of Education, who is also very eager to engage in that process. Maybe we can have an offline, maybe connect with Peter at some point offline to talk about how do we move that process forward, or Sean.
Can I just ask one, because I just have a question about
Yep.
the 300,000, and then it was revised to 500,000. So when those numbers come to us, they're coming to us from the Board of Ed.
Right.
Now, you're saying it wasn't nearly enough to do what you wanted, but why would you request, or why would they request that much if it wasn't nearly enough to do what they wanted? I mean, I just find that hard to believe that if you want something, you say, okay, this is how much it's going to cost, and you request it. But when you request 300 and that's not enough, then we revise it to 500, and that's not enough. I mean, how much is enough?
Yeah.
That's part of what I'm kind of confused about.
Yeah, it's a good question, and I'll just add a little bit of history on this particular one. As we were going through the process of the capital budget back then, we did get approval for the 500,000, and then we underwent the first facility master plan study, and we determined, by speaking to the Board of Ed and internally that, well, let's just hold off on doing that because it's not quite enough to do all our science labs, the chem, the biology labs, environmental science. And so we went through the first master plan and then the second school modernization plan, and, we didn't allocate and didn't expend the money because we weren't sure where we were going to be. And so it's kind of been sitting out there. We haven't closed it, nor do we have plans to do anything with it right now. So, and when...
So is it all or nothing then? Like, you want to do them all or none of them? Is that?
No, the reality is, as we started, the way the capital budget process worked, we didn't go out and hire a design professional to tell us what's it going to cost to renovate the labs. We made the request, we got it to 500,000, and then the reality is the only work that we could get done within that 500,000 was do essentially replace a lot of the cabinetry and the casework in some of the science labs. To do a full renovation of the labs would have required us to rip out the counters. Counters, have an asbestos core in them. So it really got to be a lot more expensive than what we had originally projected for it to cost, and that's part of the reason why it sat so long. No, we don't have to do them all. But by the same token, there's not one pressing lab that we need to do. So that's why this project has been sitting kind of in abeyance there.
Because I would almost suggest you remove it and then come back with a real number that you really think it would cost to do it the right way. I mean, I just, that's just the way how I feel. I don't know how the rest, but I just think to just keep it in there when it's not nearly enough to do what you want, I just don't understand why we would keep it in there.
That's, that was what I was saying, in terms of, you can take it or leave it. Whatever the prevailing wisdom of the council is, we really don't have a strong point of advisement for you on that item per se. But other ones, Vin, do you want to talk about the bracketed items there, those three in the red?
Yes, so those are 3 projects that are signed to the Public Building Commission. And I believe, and I'm not sure about this, that the Public Building Commission made a recommendation to combine those 3 items into one large project. We've gone out, if you look at the third one down, the $162,460, that's the Cheshire High School, regenerator ERV install. It's basically a piece of ventilation equipment. That's gone out to bid twice. We didn't get any bids. And the one proposal, I should say we got one bid, and it was astronomically high. So those 3 should be combined. We're not suggesting closing them. We're suggesting that, the PBC have those 3 projects combined and complete the work that does need to be done at Cheshire High School. And while I have the floor, I'll just point out the 3 large ones that we're closing, the $355,129, those are for the underground oil tank replacements. We've removed all the underground oil tanks that we have in our schools that we no longer use heating oil. We're on natural gas. So that project was completed under budget. The second large one is the $374,000. That was for the Norton School cafeteria renovations, which was approved before we approved building a new school, so that can get closed. And then the next one, the $118,000, that was the boiler replacement at Doolittle. That was completed and can be closed. And then on the second page, the lighting upgrades at Highland, those were completed, again, below the approved appropriation. So if you just take the total of those that we're recommending closing, that's $1,031,912. And then if we add the high school, $500,000 on top of that, it would basically reduce the appropriation liability by $1,500,000. And we're comfortable, with that, and based on this discussion, including the high school labs, we'll wait on that project. And part of the reason also to wait is, we do have this Phase 2 plan of school modernization that, we're going to engage in. So I don't think we would take that project up right now anyway.
Thank you. So I'm usually pretty hard on you guys. I'm pretty impressed with what you've done with the first-year capital improvements proposal. I looked it over very quickly. You did do some hard work here, and you reduced it dramatically, and I, for one, am generally satisfied with what I can see here very quickly, so thank you. Just a couple of minor things, which they are minor, but I thought I'd ask them anyway. The Cheshire High School utility renovation project is $75,000, which you moved to year 2, which as you explained, it seemed like it was really important. You still have this Cheshire High School mechanical tunnel improvements of $100,000 in previous funds in '22 that you haven't used. Are you going to combine those together for that project? Because it looks like you have the money to do some of the design work with that 100, but I can't remember. You talked about that, but I can't remember what you said you were doing with that original $100,000 that was approved in '22.
Give me a minute.
Yeah. You said it was 75 for design work, which, so you're kind of holding off for a year for.
So that's really to look at all the plumbing, waistline, heating lines that are under the tunnels, because they're starting to crack and fail, and we wanted to try and get ahead of it. So,
So you haven't used that money yet, but you're going to use it for physical improvements, is that what you're saying?
Yes, but we think the project is a lot bigger, and that's why we asked for design money and then pushed it out to year two.
So you want to hold on to that 100 then? You don't want to, okay, even though you haven't used it yet, you think you're going to need it?
Yeah, some of the items that are on the list that have approved that aren't used yet, we plan on using them, and some of them we're going to use this summer, not all of them. Some things I know we had a question about, just as an example, the roof ladder replacements where 125,000 was approved, and we're asking for another 125. Our plan is to go to bid next summer. We'd rather go to bid with 250, so that we can get more of the work done. That is a new OSHA requirement. I got a question about that, and I didn't realize it was a new OSHA requirement. That's why we added it to the list, and we're asking for more funding. So, yeah, I know as you look at this sheet, you say to yourself, well, gee, a lot of these aren't used yet, but the plan is to use them, and that's why we
No,
are not asking for them
I
to
could see you,
close.
you were careful about taking some out that you didn't think you'd have to use. I can see others, I won't get into them, because I assume that you have a reason for keeping some of the ones that haven't been utilized yet in there, because it looks like you're very specific on the ones you're taking out, so. But I'm satisfied that you fellas really made an effort here to help us, so thank you.
Thank you. On the prison item, I let everybody go first, but it's getting late, so I got to ask now before I forget. Couple of questions real quick. The lavatory improvements, it says you're doing those kind of worst to first kind of thing. With the $400,000, does that mean that that's all Doolittle updates, or will it be still spread across the?
Now, Doolittle's just about done.
Okay.
We've had 3 years of capital improvements at Doolittle, so we're going to start moving on, probably to Dodd.
This says Doolittle, then high school, then
And the
Dodd.
high school as well, yeah.
Okay. Okay, so it could be Dodd, could be some spending on Dodd then, in this year, this coming up, maybe.
Next year,
I mean, next fiscal, yeah, but I mean the next fiscal year, right.
next summer, right? So those projects we do over the summer.
Right, okay. And then as far as the roof replacement for Dodd, you might be sensing a theme here. So there it says you lowered the value in the roofing from 500 to 350. Does that mean your original request was 500, or is that, what does that mean?
It was in the
Okay.
previous year's capital plan. So based on some estimates we received, we lowered the number.
Okay. And I know we're chasing leaks. The Dodd roof's been a problem for a while. Give us an idea of what that problem is like now. Like, how bad is it?
Well, it's better because we've replaced whole sections of the roofs, but there's multiple roof sections that are still leaking. So, we try and stretch out the capital dollars by doing, repairing, replacing the seams, which is typically where the roof fails. So we're probably about 70% of the way complete with the Dodd roofing improvements that we need to make.
But is it like buckets on the floor catching the rainwater kind of thing, or what's?
It's not that severe, but you'll find leaks in a room where the ceiling tiles are wet, and you have to, obviously replace the ceiling tiles and then deal with the roof leak.
So if I wanted to suggest we don't spend any money on Dodd for at least another year until we sort of get a better idea of what, if we have some of these discussions about a second phase, can we not do any roofing and other work on Dodd for at least for another year and a half kind of thing?
Roofing's tough. I mean, we could continue to repair the roofing sections.
Yeah.
So we could approach it that way, but if there's a roof leak, you're going to want to deal with it. I would look at Dodd, and maybe there's some other areas that we hold off on, some of the HVAC improvements might be, you know, a better place to hold off on. So we could look at it from that point of view.
I think that was a consideration, Jim, because we're cognizant of where the previous iterations of school modernization have looked at the physical shortcomings at Dodd.
Right.
And I'm certainly more sensitive to that as we see substantial elementary school population matriculating over the next several years into that facility. I think will further compromise that building, but, so we are sensitive to that, and we've tried to prioritize things that are more urgent, particularly at that building.
Yeah, but Vinnie, what you just, well, thank you for that, but Vinnie, what you just said is you're saying that HVAC would be less of a priority, you think roofing's more of a priority?
I'm saying that roofing is more of a priority when it's leaking than some of these HVAC projects where, you know, we're looking to add cooling. I mean, heating issue that you have to take care of. So I understand the question. As I sit here, we could reprioritize some of these dollars, but I wouldn't necessarily take it out of roofing. If we've asked for roofing, if we've got a problem to deal with.
Okay, all right,
Does that
Thank
make
you.
sense?
yeah.
It just, one thing, because, I mean, no matter what we do, whether we phase two, there's no guarantee that we're gonna knock that building down. So we do have to make sure for the town's purposes that we keep it intact. So I agree with you. I think roofing is more important. I also want to just echo John's sentiment that I appreciate the time and effort you put into this, because obviously you worked hard to do what we asked you to do, and you made our job a little bit easier by you guys know what's most important better than us. You know, we know prison cells though, so.
Yeah. And if you didn't before tonight, now you do. Not firsthand, maybe, but Ben.
No, don't go there.
If I could just quickly, only because these two gentlemen are here, we did have two items that are in the technology budget. Both are related to the schools. I just want to make sure we've at least introduced them, just in case there's any questions. On page 150 and 151 of your budget books, we have the Technology Reserve Fund. This has been a budget that we've funded every year, sometimes on town side projects, sometimes on school side projects, sometimes both, as the town has invested a lot in bringing our IT infrastructure up from a much lower quality to its current much better status. And anyway, the $250,000 that's requested in year one this year is for upgrading the wireless network infrastructure for the Board of Education buildings in this specific tranche. And the next project on 151, again, another project that's been there for a number of years and also does come with a reimbursement component, grant applications, which Vin could probably touch on, is the Town and School Security Project. And this year's request is $110,000, and it is intended to replace all video surveillance and door access controls across the system and expanding its security footprint. So I just didn't want to miss it. I know it's a little late, but I wanted to make sure we got those last two projects, because outside of the canal dredging, those are all 57 first-year projects. We will have checked the box. So in case there's any questions on either of those, Vin or Jeff may be able to touch on it. Thanks, guys.
Good luck, guys. Have a great day.
Thank you.
And last but not least, Andrew Marcelli has been very patient. We have one last item on our first-year projects, if it's okay. We do have the West Main Street Canal dredging of $150,000. This is a project that he had helped kind of spearhead last year as we proposed it in year two, and it's now before year one. So Andrew's prepared just a brief update or explanation as to where we are with that project. Again, it's very early stages, and kind of what we might foresee going forward. So if I could just turn it to Andrew for a bit there. Thanks.
Sure. Thank you, guys. So I just wanted to kind of set this up, so this project was born out of, obviously, a need to dredge the canal. And so we had looked at it, we had come up with a placeholder number, and that's what's in the budget for the $150,000. So I don't want to set any sort of expectation that this is going to get us dredging from West Main Street to the box culvert where the new access is into the back parking lot at Ball and Socket, because obviously we don't have any analytical testing of the soils. We don't know what depth the canal needs to be dredged to. We don't know the condition of all the walls, and if you go out there, things are falling into the canal. There's invasive species. There's all kinds of things that need to be done. So this money was looking to set the stage for a larger project out there in order to do this correctly. And so we need to get the engineering done, we need to get the sampling done, figure out what we're dealing with sediment, and what that cost will be, so then we can bid it appropriately and then come up with the actual cost to do the work. So that's kind of the preamble to the fact also that the round for the brownfield remediation funding grants were just released for round 19 funding, which we did get the bar planning grant, which was cool, that we submitted for. But round 20 will open up this summer. I don't know if we'll be there to be able to submit this for that, because we'd have to actually prove, based on the constituents of the soils, that there is areas of concern, which we don't know yet. So maybe we could go after additional state funding for actual remediation and cleanup of the canal in the winter time. So the next round opens, I believe, in February for DECD funding for brownfield cleanup. So, with all that being said, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
So Andrew, the 150 then is just for analysis and design?
Yes.
Do you think we need that much? Just, I mean, it seems like a generous budget for a small section of canal. Can we cut it? Are you thinking maybe, I don't know if you've talked to consultants or anything?
I haven't talked to consultants, and so, initially, I wasn't quite sure exactly what it would cost, and so I just wanted to make sure that, I don't know, the access in there is difficult, how many samples we're gonna have to do, and then there's a lot of engineering I feel it's gonna need to be done to look at the width of the canal, and then also the permitting that's gonna have to be done. Deep's gonna have to be involved, and so there's a lot of legwork that needs to be done to do it correctly. So that's why the placeholder's there. I don't think it's gonna cost that much, but that was just their initial, kind of the back of the envelope assumption.
Dan, do you have any opinion as to whether we need that much? I'm in favor of doing it. I don't want to give so much money that it's over.
Certainly a liberal budget to get forward on it, and I think we've had the discussion before on similar projects. If you half funded it, you might get to the point where you can look forward next year at additional funding. However, full funding at the 150 that we had in front of you, it would allow you to carry forward any balance funds into the next phase of the project. So it could be 75, it could even get up to 100, but again, any balance forward would roll into the larger scale project as you develop it.
Okay. I'd be more comfortable at 100 if you're all right with that. I don't want to slow the project down, but I think that's enough to get a lot of work done. A lot of it. It's not that big a section of canal to deal with. So, but it's not really an informed judgment here on this. It's just a gut. So anyway, but thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Just a quick question. Again, not an expert on dredging either. Just for, I guess I'm sure other people are trying to figure out the purpose of dredging it, and how it will affect the remainder of the canal, and will eventually the rest of it have to be dredged, and how far, because we're sure there's some remediation that has to be done, but I'm just wondering, you're doing that one section, how will it affect both sides of the canal?
Yeah, I think, and that's what we need this money for, to do the engineering, because, it was dredged, the canal was dredged, and Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, it was dredged from West Main Street going north during that trail construction project that took place there. And that was done actually by DOT. Deep, actually, Deep.
Division of Deep that's unfortunately no longer, we were actually able to take advantage of the program that they initiated. And that was done right before the other projects started to take advantage of the old rail bed that was there.
And it's
just clean out whatever could be in the bottom and just make it so that it's somewhat clean and safe for the environment.
I mean, if you look at that section now, I mean, you can see the channel is getting narrower and narrower with the amount of sediment that's in there, and there's all these invasive species that are growing. I mean, there's a lot of flooding that's taking place there. Not saying that this is gonna completely solve that problem, but I'm assuming it's definitely gonna help. And then, there's new outfalls that are going into the canal from the new surface parking lot, and then all the roof leaders from Ball and Socket are all going into this section there that goes to a box culvert. So we really need to look to see how all of that ties in. To my knowledge, and I don't know if Dan has he might know more than me, but I don't think anything's ever been looked at from that, on that actual
So
section.
potentially, we may have to keep going, right, south on that?
I mean, the town's kind of a
Yeah.
bowl into this man-made canal, so I mean, there's a lot to look at.
Okay, thanks.
Just out of curiosity, is the idea also to remove all that vegetation that's on both sides of the channel there, or the canal there, next to the building?
I mean, yeah, I think that all needs to be looked at.
Yeah.
To open it up.
But that wouldn't be part of the dredging project necessarily. Or
I
would-
think
You would have to remove
you'd have
the
to.
majority of the vegetation. We did a similar thing on the northern side, is there were selected trees that were over a certain caliber and a certain species that were maintained, and the majority of the other materials were removed in order to make way for the actual dredging process, reestablishment of the channel.
Gotcha, okay. Good deal.
Hi.
All right.
I'm well, thank you. Thanks for answering our questions. My question is this: if you spend the money to dredge a certain area, what kind of expectancy should we have before that particular area would need to be dredged again?
Dan?
That's a loaded question.
Yeah, I mean.
For instance, the northern section, that was done less than 10 years ago, and there are sections that you have some sediment buildup in. It's a tough thing to put a number to. I mean, it probably historically has never been dredged.
Okay.
The life of the canal, so to say that it would be some time before you would have to re-dredge it.
And I would just add to that I think that time period does matter. We have switched away from sanding our roads in that time, and we now salt roads, so there's less material that flows its way from all parts of Cheshire to the low parts of Cheshire than there were back when we sanded roads. And so again, that's last 10 to 15 years. Now the full switch to salt, that also helps. So, but it's a great question, and one that, we're probably not equipped to answer, other than I'm not aware of it ever being dredged in that section back before, it was Dalton's property and whatnot, so.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right, thank you. Thank you.
Anything else tonight, Sean? I
No, I
had
think
one
we
question.
covered a lot, and I just would point out, we have covered all of the first-year items that were first proposed. I know we've had a number that we're moving in and out, and again, Dan and I are still kind of going back through similar exercise the Board of Ed did with some of our past projects, and also kind of prioritizing based on the conversations and the direction we've had from you over the last couple of meetings to have something hopefully for our future meeting.
So the amount that you proposed originally, it was 14.195, right? Is that what the number is? Is that what I'm seeing in the book?
15,509.
15,509, okay.
If you may be looking on the page that does not include CNR, there's a separate page for CNR, so I
I
think
was
that's
looking
probably.
at 139, but that's fine. I just wanted to get the initial number
Yeah,
correctly.
the full number was 15,509.
Okay. Now, looking at the historical comparison page there, it shows a gross budget and a net budget. The net budget is that's the projects we were able to complete that year. Is that why there's
Oh,
the
so
difference?
are you on page 139?
So I
Yeah.
was looking at 139 before for that 14,195, but right now I jumped over to 141.
Yep, so that's a great question. Yeah, but 140, yeah, that's perfect. So 139 is a good way to see what is happening there. So you see the 15,509 in total in yellow before you get down to the 14,155 at the very bottom. If you go a little bit.
Yeah, I do see that now.
So
yeah.
15,509, town manager recommended. Those below are are either grants that offset the cost, or the use of cash, which is again what we call CNR, capital non-recurring funds. That's the 1.262 that's proposed there by Jim Jascott, sort of manages that financing across based on appropriations received from the council in the operating budget, for a net cost to the town, net that you'll need to borrow, of 14,155, so the number you're referencing. The chart on 141 references all of those going back the last 10 years. So the difference between, we call them offsetting resources or any other, so we have the gross number and then you have any other non-bonded funding. That gives you your net over the last 10 years. So you'll see a big example being, of course, 2023, when we had the 2 new schools proposed. The amount that's gross is far higher than the amount that you would net out after the grant reimbursements expected
Right,
from the
okay.
state.
But whatever we end up, like, for example, over the last, if you don't include the outlier there, the
Yep.
large number, it's like, the difference between the gross and net over the last 10 years is like a difference of about $2,500. Or, sorry, $2.5 million.
Yep, that's right, yep.
So, whatever number we end up with, the net amount will be somewhere in that range of 2.5 million less or so. I mean, obviously it varies a little bit each year, but it'll be in that range.
Yeah, it's usually in the range of, again, it's project specific because you can always kind of count on $1 million coming off thereabouts because that's what we budget in, or 1.1 million, I think, in CNR.
Yeah.
And so it's, again, Jim moves that number around just a little bit based on actual project appropriation. So he lines some up as CNR and some to be bonded. That determines how many projects we have bond language for when you go to do your final resolutions. But yeah, the only other exception to that would be any other areas where we could expect to receive grants. So Andrew just referenced potentially applying for a brownfield grant. Again, doesn't sound like we'll have that for the design, but if, for instance, we had second-year funding or even first-year funding that was construction or grant eligible, we would be putting below the line, anything in that number would be increasing the amount of offsets and therefore reducing the net cost. But it's really project specific. Some years we have a lot of projects that are grant eligible, and some years we have, roads and excavators and plow trucks, and they're just rarely. That one year we had the Volkswagen grant we applied for, but were unsuccessful for a plow truck. But we, our engineering team, our public works team, in particular, really look for every grant opportunity possible. And some years we propose them with grant language, and we don't know if we're going to be successful or not, but it at least helps, as you guys try to plan how much we can afford to take on in tax burden. Obviously, the more grants we have helps with that.
And there was, America, when we were discussing I think the WPCD part of it, they had pulled out a truck request or something.
Correct.
But that's in this 15,509.
It is currently, right, the truck is still in that number.
Right.
So there are a lot of modifications we have to make, because, right, these numbers were finalized in late February.
Sure.
When we started producing budget books the first week of March.
Right.
So,
okay.
yeah, there's a number of sort of updates, and I think that's probably the best thing to bring to the next meeting. It's just sort of an update as to where are we now, because obviously there's a lot of things moving on. It's impossible for anyone to keep track
Right.
just off of notes of how many things are moving around. And now we have new ones from the Board of Ed that we could update, kind of a master list of first-year projects specifically, so you can see what that overall number is now down to, from 15 down to, somewhere between $8 to $11 million or something like that, and then possibly even further based on more conversation.
So can you provide us with kind of that update before the next meeting?
I think so. So our next meeting is the 25th, and that's a
Tentatively the date,
Wednesday?
yeah.
It's a Tuesday? Yeah, we should be able to do it.
Yeah,
We'll make it happen.
okay. Thanks. All set?
Couple things, Sean, for anticipating trying to make the best use of our time on the 25th. I had mentioned at the last meeting, and I think you have it, the list of planning money available, list of CNR available. Couple things that,
One pass it down here, I have.
Oh,
These are one and the same, so it's all CNR projects, which includes all the planning money.
Perfect.
So these are our CNR projects, which again are cash funded. This is not a list we had kind of circulated the first time when we went through capital funded or bonded projects. But this list, you'll see, is much smaller, because these are just those that we fund with cash. But sorry, to Peter's point, you'll see a couple appropriations for capital planning money. Those are general, non-specific planning accounts we've approved in prior years to take care of some kind of pre-project design, just things that come up along the way that we tap into when we have a non-specific project or a future proposed capital project. Otherwise, if we know we're going to do an effort, sometimes we put planning money, design money in the first year, as you've seen a number of times in this budget. These are kind of more non-specific, but they are available there and a good consideration as we decide how much design money to propose or to approve in the next year.
And then early on in discussions, back when rec was in, pool roof cost, I don't know if you were able to get that or have that. We should take a look at that. I know a number of members on the council are interested in doing a traffic study. If we could put in a number for that, or give us a number for that. Probably planning money for access to Cheshire access to the Yankee Expressway property. John Mylone had mentioned, I know it's not year one, but just making sure that we've captured linear trail paving as an item. And then, I don't know if it's in there or not, but I have this on my note sheet, planning money for animal control. Go ahead.
And Greg had mentioned, which I think was very good, that, and Dan was aware of it, but I'm not sure if he needs money to do it, to resurfacing of the bridges as well. I thought that was very appropriate along the linear trail. They are deteriorating, so.
And on the pool roof, we did, we had two different proposals. I did sign an agreement with Silver Petroselli to do their evaluation. So they're doing a structural evaluation, investigation, hazard material testing, and providing construction documents. I signed that last week. So they're doing the analysis now on the pool roof, and we should have, certainly by next capital budget, if not sometime sooner, we'll have an update on where we're likely headed with that.
Perfect, thank you. Anybody else? Seeing none, I'll call for a motion to adjourn. Mr. Walsh, Mr. Jenks, all in favor? Good night, everyone, thank you.